Hey guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today I'm going to be doing a part 2 to my favorite audiobooks of all time video. I've gotten a few requests since I posted that video so long ago to do an updated version. If you missed part 1 of my favorite audiobooks ever, I will link it up above and down below. You don't have to watch that video first, but these are going to be even more of my all-time favorite audiobooks. I have been absolutely loving, probably in the past 9 months to a year, reading a book with the audio and the physical. I understand not everyone has the means or the desire to get 2 versions of every book that they read, and I understand that that is a very privileged position that I am in, but I do get a lot of my audiobooks from the library through the Libby app or the Hoopla app, so if you're wondering how to access audiobooks, I definitely recommend those. As far as purchasing audiobooks, I would always recommend Libro FM first, but of course Audible is an accessible option as well. However, they are monopolizing the audiobook trade right now and not the most ethical, so just kind of be aware of that if you support Audible in any way. I also know that Everand, previously known as Scribd, has a lot of audiobooks on there as well. I've never used it, but that could be a source for you. Now that we've gone over how to get your audiobooks, here are 12 more of my favorite audiobooks of all time. And if you want 4 more on top of the recs that I'm giving in this video, you can watch the extended cut of this video for 4 more of my favorite audiobooks of all time. That extended cut will be up on Patreon for all of my tiers, even the very lowest for $3.99 a month. And once you subscribe to the lowest tier, you can watch every single extended cut video. They're all available on my Patreon feed. All right, enough rambling from me. Let's go ahead and get into the books. Starting out with one of my favorite thrillers with a ton of media in it, which I think makes for a really interesting audio experience. That is Murder in the Family by Kara Hunter. Now, I only gave this thriller 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't my favorite of all time, but it was pretty decent. The audio, however, is really cool. As you can see, the book is written like a script, and we are following a like Netflix-esque kind of reality show where people are going over a true crime case. There's a lot of media in the book, which is interesting to look at, but everything is super well done on audio. The way that the episodes are unfolding, the way that the forum stuff is read out, and the way that the like fades and background music, theme song, title sequences, all of that is on the audio is just incredible. I love a really well-produced audiobook, especially when a book is supposed to be like a TV show or a podcast, and it really has those elements within the audio. In this book, as I said, we are following a TV show that's very like Netflix-esque, revisiting a cold case of a man who was murdered. This happened years ago and the case is still unsolved, so they gathered a panel of experts to re-examine the evidence and see if they can solve this case. It's kind of like a race against the experts as the reader to try to solve it before they do. I loved taking that as like a fun little game, and I did not solve the case before the experts, but I did have a lot of fun going through the evidence and trying to solve the case. I thought it was completely unpredictable. A couple of the reasons why I didn't like this book, however, is that it did drag a little bit. Some of the chapters or episodes got a little bit long, and the ethics of the true crime representation in this book are kind of muddy. I feel like this book was trying to make a statement about the ethics of true crime while at the same time feeding into the thing that it seems to be against. So there was a little bit of muddiness on the messaging teaching there. But as far as the actual murder mystery plot, I really enjoyed it, and the structure of the audiobook was so great. I also really love listening to nonfiction on audio, especially memoirs that are read by the authors themselves. So I have a couple of memoirs to mention in this video, starting out with Paris, the memoir about Paris Hilton's life, and I absolutely love her writing style. I would read books on books on books on books, just Paris Hilton narrating about her life. I feel like I learned so much more about the person she is rather than the character she portrays. She narrates the audiobook herself, and you can really hear the emotion in the stories that she's telling. She had such a traumatic upbringing and had so many things happen to her so young. She has dedicated her life to making a change and having young kids not go through what she went through at that age, and I just think it's beautiful the way that she has been able to come into her advocacy work. She's so intelligent and so well written, well spoken, which I feel like a lot of people don't know. I just absolutely loved my reading experience of this. I was intrigued, I was blown away. I feel like I uncovered so many more layers to this iconic woman, and I absolutely loved it. One of my favorite memoirs of all time. Another one of my favorite memoirs that I absolutely adored on audio is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. As you can see, I annotated and tabbed the shit out of this book. I absolutely adored it. I would race to pause the audio and find the little passage in the book that I wanted to highlight and annotate because it's just so amazing, so well written. And Dolly Alderton's writing style is very just like straightforward and relatable, very easily digestible without being plain, if that makes sense. I feel like this book should be required reading for any young woman between the age of 17 and 30. I feel like this is a defining book about your 20s, and Dolly is going through her life and the moments that defined her, specifically in regards to teaching her about love. And she has these kind of check-in chapters where she will pause at every other year of her life and say, like, this is everything I knew about love at 14, and now this is everything I knew about love at 17, and then at 21. And it is really cool to see how things changed and progressed for her as we're reading the stories about what shaped her. It has so many good nuggets in here. It's so meaningful. Trigger warnings for traumatic loss, for eating disorder, for mental health, for suicidality. But if you can handle, you know, the real talk about the real things, I think you will really love this memoir. Another media-focused thriller that I absolutely loved on audio was The Appeal by Janice Hallett. This book is about a group of old rich people who basically just put on plays. Like, this is their little hobby, this is what they do, and one of the older couples in this player group has a granddaughter who gets sick and has cancer, and so they appeal to the rest of the players to donate and help their cause to pay for their granddaughter's treatment. There is a lot of suspicion and speculation amongst this group of shady rich people. They're all kind of talking behind each other's backs, which obviously we as the reader get to see, and eventually it all leads to a murder. So we have a lot of subplots going on, and it's a lot to keep straight, but I think the audio is really helpful for that. The whole story is told with media, so texts and emails, and I just think it's really great to have the audio along with the physical when you're reading a book like this. Like, it's easy for me when I'm reading physically to just like read these text messages and then forget like who is saying what. So the audio kind of forces me to slow down and hear like the name of the person who's sending the text before each one. And I ended up giving this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved the plot. The rich people are just so vapid and so funny. All the characters are so unique, and the way that they're just these older people so obsessed with the like theater dynamics. It reminds me of like high school theater kids all grown up. It was so funny. I have another nonfiction for you, and that is It Came from the Closet, and this is a queer horror story slash essay collection about the impact of the horror genre on the queer community and kind of the relationship between queerness and horror. Each essay takes an iconic horror movie like Society or Candyman. There's literally so many in here from a queer, trans, etc. kind of lens. We'll talk about the impact of the specific horror trope or the specific horror movie. Some of my favorite ones in here are the one about child's play and the one about Jennifer's body and bisexuality. I just fucking love this book. If you are queer and you're wondering like, why am I drawn to horror? Why is there this inherent connection here? Is there something wrong with me? Especially when horror can be quite exploitative to the queer community. This explains it so beautifully from a queer lens with a lot of like relatability, dark humor, and if you're a horror nerd who just likes to learn about like film history and things like that, you'll really like this one as well. I loved the audio. Each essay is narrated by the specific narrator and it's great. Next up, I have a recent listen, and that is One of Our Own by Lucinda Berry. If I've ever recommended Saving Noah to you and you enjoyed this book, you have to read One of Our Own. It is very, very similar, and I believe it is audio only, so you can only access this title on audio. I got it through Libro FM's ALC program, so I know it's available on Libro for sure. In this book, we're following a mother, and she is a volunteer suicide hotline operator, and one day she gets a call from a girl who goes to her son's school, and she's telling her about the reasons why she has this suicidal ideation, and our main character starts to worry if maybe her son was involved in the events that led to this poor girl's deteriorating mental health. She has these shoddy ethics as a suicide hotline operator, and she ends up getting deeply involved in this girl's life and livelihood and mental health, and things come to a head very quickly. It is horrifying. It's fast-paced. The audio is so unbelievably well done. All the sound effects, everything is so well produced. The pacing is incredible. It's only about like 3 hours and 45 minutes long, so if you listen on 2x speed, you can read this in a couple hours, but the intensity of this story is so much more than the couple hours that I spent listening to it. It really lives in my mind. The plot, the characters, the quality of the production of the audio, every single part of it, I was absolutely blown away. I love Lucinda Berry's mental health representation. She's so great at educating without feeling info dumpy and still keeping the psychological horror elements without making them problematic. This is probably my top recommendation from this video. Next up, I have Jackal by Erin E. Adams. This is another thriller with a little bit of a speculative element to it, and I just absolutely loved the narrator of this audiobook. There are some narrators that when they're reading from a really strong character's point of view, I feel like they are that character. I don't know, like it could be that the voice just fits or that they're a really good voice actor, but I think that's definitely the case with Jackal. Our main character is returning to her predominantly white hometown for her black best friend's wedding, and her little girl is kidnapped at the wedding, her friend's little girl. And this is a trend where every summer in this small town, a little black girl goes missing. So our main character takes it upon herself to get involved and try to solve this mystery of missing black girls. I really enjoyed the plot of this book. The pacing is great. The lore is so interesting. It's just such a full story, and there's really not much for me to critique about it at all. But out of all the amazing elements, the number one thing that stood out was my connection to the main character. where I feel like I really knew her and I was really rooting for her. Everything that she went through, all of the decisions that she made, I had so much empathy and understanding for, even if I didn't always agree with her. I think that makes a really strong female lead in a thriller, especially when it's the type of thriller where we're doing a lot of like investigating and our main character is kind of driving the plot forward. The audio was super high quality. It was an easy listen and I was absolutely blown away by the ending. It was unpredictable. The only reason why I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars, and really it's more like 4.75, is because the ending thing, like I just wish I would have been prepared for the speculative elements of this book rather than feeling like it was this very real world story and then having these other elements come in. So I understand that might be a little bit of a light spoiler. I only say that because I wish I would have known it. I think I would have given this book 5 stars if I had been prepared for that. Next up, we have one of my favorite horror books of all time, and I feel like even if you're not a horror reader, you would absolutely love this book, especially if you like documentary style books. This reads like nonfiction, even though it is complete fiction, and that is Fantastic Land. Oh my god, I could rave about this book all day, all night, forever and ever, especially with the audio. There are some chapters in this book that were so unbelievably chilling. I literally felt frozen in place, like I couldn't move. It was so effective. In this book, we are following interviews of the survivors of a natural disaster. At this amusement park called Fantastic Land, all of the employees were sheltering in place during a hurricane, and because they were sheltering in such a huge area that had a lot of infrastructure to it, they were prepared for storms. They had backup generators and all this food in the park. The US government was really slow to send them aid in the aftermath of the hurricane. So all of the people that were sheltered there were kind of abandoned for months. And it turned into a Lord of the Flies, every man for themselves kind of situation. It turned absolutely horrifying. And when the rescuers turned up, they were not prepared for the bloody scene that awaited them. It was not just the hurricane that took a toll on these people. They actually ended up turning on each other. So there are so many elements of horror, the corruption in the government and just like the negligence of the aid teams. There's the horror of the actual hurricane and the natural disaster, the like survival element of things. Then there is the psychological horror of the group dynamics that happen in a survival situation. And of course, the threat of violence from your fellow man. It had so many layers. It was absolutely horrifying. I love the interview style and I think it lends itself really well to the audio format. I just can't rave enough about this book. It was one of my very favorite books that I read all of last year and I so highly recommend it. Please read it. Please read it. If it sounds interesting at all to you and you're a fan of documentaries, you have to read this book. Next up, we got another thriller and that is The Drowning Woman by Robin Harding. This is about a very rich hoity-toity woman who comes across a homeless woman and she and her start to build this relationship and she starts to disclose to this homeless woman her situation and that she's in an abusive marriage. So they think that they could probably help each other. The rich woman could use the homeless woman's anonymity and the homeless woman could obviously use this rich woman's funds to get herself back on her feet. So they end up striking a deal with each other, but a lot goes awry and it leads to multiple dead bodies. This was another case of I just absolutely loved the voice actors for this audiobook. Both of the women were characterized so great in the audio and I finished this in just a matter of a few hours because I was so enraptured by the voice acting and the way that the story was told. I feel feel like I got so much more out of the audio than I would have got out of just the physical reading experience, because overall this was just like a very straightforward, honestly kind of like basic thriller. It was shocking and it was really fun to read, but the audio I feel like just added so much. So I wanted to include it in this video because it's not very often that I have just a basic thriller that I feel like the audio stands out to me. Next up, I have a duo of books for you, and that is Really Anything by Ryan LaSala. Their audiobooks are done so well. The production quality is through the roof. These are both YA horror books. The Honeys is kind of like a Heathers-esque story about a non-binary main character trying to figure out what happened to their sister in her death. So they go back to her summer camp and meet her summer friends who are very catty and very suspicious. And in Beholder, we are following a gay main character who believes that he has some kind of special abilities when he is the sole survivor of a mass tragedy at a house party. Both of these books are really great on their own, kind of weird, trippy, queer, speculative horror, but the audio, phenomenal. Absolutely blew me away on both counts. The sound effects, the production, the quality of it, like it's just absolutely insane how great these audios are produced. If I was an author, I would want my books to be produced the way that these audiobooks are. And I think both of those are just really great reads for this summer as well. The Honeys is so like summer camp vibes, and Beholder takes place in New York, so it's like the stifling heat of the city in the summer, you know, that kind of vibe. Like, it's just so good. Next up, I have Annie Bot by Sierra Greer, and this one is such a unique book. I don't even know what genre to call this book really. Maybe like sci-fi thriller with a touch of literary and a lot of amazing feminist commentary. We are following the perspective of a female AI robot whose sole purpose is to basically be a personal assistant to this tech bro. And she's trying to be the best female companion that she can. So along the way, we are discovering from the lens of AI what it's like for her to be a real human woman. So just from a purely like technical lens, what is it like to be a woman in this day and age? There's a lot of great commentary, as you can imagine, and as the story unfolds, we discover that our AI main character wants to escape. She no longer wants to live in the way that she's being forced to live. It is such a fast-paced feeling of like liberation and thrill as you're reading this. It's also kind of like heartbreaking and disturbing to see the demands that every woman, even AI, has to deal with. It is so progressive, so interesting, so unique. I'm obsessed with it, and the audio kept me hooked completely from the first chapter. I don't remember if there were sound effects or anything special about the audio. I just remember really liking listening to this one on audio. And the last recommendation I have for you in this video is actually a whole grouping of books, and that is the Creature Feature collection that's on KU. A group of horror and thriller authors all came together and wrote these like tiny little snippet creature features, and I really like a lot of them, specifically the ones by Josh Mallerman and Chandler Baker. Those two were my favorites. I also like the one by Grady Hendrix, although it is quite a bit shorter. All of these were absolutely fantastic on audio, really quick, easy listens, and if you like a horror creature feature, you're gonna love these. They're quick little bites for when you're in a slump, or maybe when you're just like going to the gym and want to throw something on really quick. And I also love that they're all available on Kindle Unlimited. Again, that does mean that you have to go through audio, which is not my favorite, but 6 creature features by really great authors for free on KU. I mean, I feel like it's really great. So those are all of my audiobook recommendations that I have for this video. Again, if you want to watch the extended cut, that will be linked on Patreon down below. You can join my bottom tier and still have access to all the extended cuts, or you can join my middle tier and get access to my book club, or my top tier, and then you get access to all of the things, including an exclusive extra video every single month, which will never see the light of day on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested. But either way, thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Of course, don't forget to read a book and go to therapy this week, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!